Hi everyone, Shane R. Monroe here, and today we are going to get you up and running with EmuDeck, the latest version, all the trimmings. But if you have not yet watched and followed my dolphin tricks and tips video, I would recommend you do that so that your dolphin looks a little bit more like mine and you have access to certain things that you might not normally have. The process begins at emudeck.com, where we're going to hit download and select Steam OS. Make sure you choose the free version, obviously, if you don't want to join Patreon. And on the desktop, make sure it's on the desktop, save the .desktop file. It must be .desktop or you're going to run into problems. This is a super tiny download. All the work comes later, and I think it'll be quick for everybody. All right, we're going to go to our console real quick, and we're going to make sure that we have a sudo password, because there are some things that EmuDeck might install that might require it. So go to your console, type passwd, and if you have no password, it's going to ask you for one. Otherwise, it's going to ask you what the current password is. Remember, when you type your password, you're not going to see any type ahead, so type carefully. Okay. Now we're ready to do the heavy lifting-ish part. That is to actually install EmuDeck, find the icon on your desktop, and go ahead and continue. All right, so now it's going to actually download the heavier piece of the script. So really what you downloaded was an installer for an installer. And we'll let this chew for just a moment. It won't take long. And there's going to be a console window open the whole time. We're going to bring this front and center so that we can watch. But we'll have some interesting things to show you, so stick around here. Before we actually get started, we're going to be prompted for some questions. Now, I always use custom mode, and you'll see why in just a minute. So what is your ROM directory? This isn't asking you where you want to install EmuDeck. This is where your custom ROM folders and BIOSes are going to be. Because later on, you might want to change the location of this. Maybe you install a new micro SD card. I beg you, we're going to use a virtual SIM link to actually do the install. Now, whether you want to do it internally on your home or SSD, or you want to do it on your SD card, we're going to make a virtual SIM link to it. So grab the full path of where you want your emulation folder to be. In this case, we're using the SD card. We're going to grab it, copy it. Now, we're going to go to the home folder where we're going to create our virtual link. Create new, and we're going to do a link to file or directory. File or directory. Inside the file or directory to link to, paste that path in and call it capital EMU, capital virtual. Now, I maintain this nomenclature throughout the videos and all of my other videos, so if you want to name it the same, it might be helpful. Now, inside of there, it's taking you straight to wherever you pointed it to. In this case, it's pointed to the SD card. If you ever have to change SD cards, it's very simple to change that link. Now, we'll go to home and choose the EMU virtual. Don't click inside of it, just select it and then hit OK. And next. Of course, we are on the Steam Deck. And now, which emulators and tools do we want? Now, we want probably all of these, but you'll notice when you click some of them, they're going to say, hey, you want RetroArch or standalone, RetroArch or standalone, RetroArch or standalone. Just hit both. There are times when you'll want to use one over the other, and this will happen on several of these that you choose. Okay, same thing here, RetroArch or standalone, RetroArch, just get both. And same for MGBA, RetroArch or standalone, you want both. Great. And we'll make sure we get the excellent N64 emulator here, and again, both. All right, now we're ready to proceed. You'll also notice that Citra is back along with Lime 3DS. Which one you choose to use will be all about you. Now we need to optimize configurations. There's no reason to uncheck any of these. Check them all. All right, next. Now, configure autosave. Do you want the game to restore exactly where you were the next time you run it? I'm not a fan of that. I'll use save states or something like that. Your choice. Retro achievements are amazing. I've got a whole nother video on why retro achievements are great. If you don't have an account already, you can skip this part, but I'm going to go ahead and log in now because I love me some retro achievements. And if you're not using these things, you're really missing out on some great stuff. All right. Game bezels, people love them or hate them. I love them because I like to keep original aspect ratios. I don't want to stretch a 4:3 into some other weird aspect ratio. So I'm going to go original whenever's possible. Your mileage may vary. So I'm going to say I want the real SNES aspect ratio. Okay. And again, I want the regular aspect ratio. I don't want to see any stretching. I don't want any graphical glitches. Black bars don't scare me. They're not going to take me up to their spaceship and abuse me. By all means, select them if you like. I am not a fan. I don't like anything that might possibly shave performance out of my game. All right, so do you want a position matching controller layout or a one-to-one sort of layout? Again, it's all up to you. Now, this is kind of tricky. A couple people got stuck on this one. You see how they're lit up or not lit up? Make sure you have Steam Library lit up and at least one of the other ones. In our case, we're going to use Emulation Station DE or ESDE as it's called now. And you can pick your default theme. Again, it's totally up to you. I'll probably end up getting a different theme, but it's nice that they have so many options now. They didn't used to have this many options, so this is a nice upgrade. So pick one you like. And now we actually are at the install point. Now we're going to trim a lot of this off because it takes about 10 minutes in total. But I do want to show you one thing. At some point, you're going to get to a spot where it says Dolphin widescreen off, and it's just going to sit there and sit there and sit there. An hour will go by and you're wondering what's going on. Well, as it turns out, there's a pop-up hidden behind this window that you need to clear. So we'll slide on down there to the console. You pop this open and you will see it's waiting for an input. That's why it's been sitting here for like 2 hours. So we'll hit OK. Now I'm going to leave everything up because it's going to ask again for another one. Now there could be more by the time you watch this video. So I would leave that console window up for the time being because there, see, got another one. And we'll go ahead and say OK. All right, so now we'll zip through here. We'll do the final bit, another couple minutes, and we are done. All right, so now there's some post-installation stuff. Let's continue with that. Do you want to let EmuDeck import it from a USB drive, or do you want to do a manual copy? I always choose manual copy. I've got my stuff together. I know where all my crap is. I don't need their tool. I don't want to have to use a USB drive. I don't want to have to use an external drive. I've got everything all set up the way I like. But it is showing you, see, home, Emu Virtual, and emulation folder. Great. So we're going to go ahead and say we would prefer to launch with ESDE. Now, you still need Steam ROM Manager to inject ESDE. So we will let Steam ROM Manager run. We'll get that in just a second here. All right. Now, this is a little bit new. You need to choose a profile, even if you only have one profile. I would have loved it to default to the single profile, but this is in case you have more than one user. All right. Great. And now we're ready to decide what games do we want to parse here. Now, again, the only thing I want Steam ROM Manager to inject is ESDE. Everything else will run from there. And there we go, add our games to Steam, and it's going to parse everything that you selected. Now, I only selected ESDE, so we get one single entry. Now, you can choose different artworks. It's your leisure, whatever you like. Click, click, click. All right, that'll do. And hit save to Steam. Now it's injecting that launcher into Steam right now so that we can launch this from gaming mode very, very easily. Now, you may be tempted to go in and maybe do some stuff in here. You see how it's blinking there saying manage your emulators? Don't do anything. Close it. Close it, close it, close it, and rerun it. The reason being is there may be a hotfix. There may be something that pops up. And you'll also notice that when we go back in, there's no longer a blinking manage emulators, right? So it cleared a few things up. So don't do anything after the install other than close it and bring it back up. So if we go into Steam, you'll find an entry down here called ESDE. And that's it. This is what runs Emulation Station. So let's go ahead and run it. Now you're probably thinking, but there's no games. And you're right, there are no games. So don't mess with any of this. I just wanted to show you in case you ran across it. just exit out. We're going to go ahead and do the ROMs thing and the BIOS things here now. So as long as they're in the right spot, as long as they're in the BIOS folder, as long as they're in the ROMs folder in the correct directory, right? As long as the game is for the particular system is in the right folder, all of this will work fine. Now, there are a few concessions, right? ROMs cannot be compressed in certain formats. We'll go over some more of this in a minute. Now, BIOS files. Now, I've copied over from my computer all my BIOS files and all the ROMs that I want to put over here. So I already have a BIOS folder in the old folder. It's not going to be there for you, but all of my BIOS files were backed up into my SD card. So I'm going to grab all of these and I'm going to copy them over to the BIOS folder in the EmuDeck installation folder. But before we do that, let's take a look at how you can tell whether you've got the newer system's BIOS files correct. So right here inside of EmuDeck is something called the BIOS checker. And the BIOS checker is one of your best friends because you're going to run this guy and it's going to tell you exactly what you're missing. You don't have a PlayStation 1 BIOS, you don't have a PlayStation 2 BIOS, you're missing that, you're missing Sega CD, you're missing all these things. And they'll even tell you a lot of interesting things about BIOS files. They have to be in the right case. They have to be the right checksum. They have to be the right location, right? There's all sorts of things that you need to pay attention to. So that's how you check to see if those are fixed. Most of the things before PlayStation 1 don't require a BIOS at all. So now we're back in my BIOS folder that has all my backed up BIOS files, and I'm going to copy them right into Emulation BIOS. Now, some of these are going to overwrite, so I have to select all, right into the folders, select all, overwrite. So this is all standard stuff here. There's already some things that are here. All right, now I've got all of my BIOS files, and I've got BIOS files for everything, just to make sure that I got it all taken care of. But let's take a look at our BIOS checker now. Hey now, we've got pretty much everything here except for that one who shall not speak its name. All right, we're going to talk about that later. All right, so now let's do some ROMs. Now, we're not going to get crazy here. ROMs are a little more tricky. They have to be in either uncompressed or the appropriately designated format. So PS3s are very strange. PS2s can be in CHD format. Your Nintendo games, your old NES games can be zipped, but they can't be 7-zip. They cannot be RAR'd. You can see here, I'm going to copy over some PlayStation Classic or PS1 games. These have already been compressed into the CHD format. I highly recommend any of your disk-based images are in the CHD format. We're now going to copy these CHDs over to the ROM/PSX folder. Don't ask me where to get these, I can't help you. Now, I will tell you that if you have ISO images or bin queues, that there is a tool in EmuDeck we're going to look at later that will help you convert those into CHDs, and you'll save a ton of space. CHD is like compressed hard drive files, so you want that. All right, so we're going to copy those files on over. And again, this could be copying it from anywhere, right? You could have downloaded these. You could have gone to your NAS and got them. You could have copied them over with SSHFS, like what I did. You could have brought it over on an SD card. You could have brought it over on a flash drive. It doesn't matter. All right, so now that we've actually moved some ROMs over and some BIOS files, we should be able to do something here. Let's see what we got. If we go to Emulation Station, hey, look at that. Now there's a PlayStation category we can actually select. Perfect. So what we have in there are the 5 games that we copied over. There's no metadata, there's no artwork or anything like that. We'll get to that in a minute. But let's just make sure that one of these things works. This is a great side-scrolling shooter, Einhander. I love this game. I use it for all my demos. And you can see with the first run, it's creating memory cards and all this other stuff. You probably won't see a lot of that, but you can see, hey, look at that. We're getting the Sony PS1 logo. We're not going to do a whole bunch here. I just want you to see that the game actually loads and starts. Now, if you get a black screen and it doesn't load at all, your ROMs are probably bad. Your BIOS files could be bad. It could be a number of different things. Emulation can be tricky. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this thing. I'm in desktop mode, so the built-in controls don't work as well. So I'm just using the mouse and keyboard a little bit here to get out of that. Okay. So let's take a look now at how you would get that game injected into Steam. This is not my preferred method. If you write to me and ask me for help with Steam ROM Manager, I'm probably not going to be your guy, but listen, if enough people cry for it in the comments, listen, I believe in giving my people what they want. So let's go to the Steam ROM Manager again. This is what we use, remember, to inject Emulation Station into Steam. Now we're going to use it to inject PlayStation 1 games into Steam. There's a couple of reasons why you may want to do this. So remember, all of our parsers are off. So I'm going to scroll down until I find not only the system, but also the emulator that I want to use. So PlayStation, come on, a little bit more, DuckStation, right? DuckStation's the emulator I want to use, not RetroArch Beetle. So I'm going to select DuckStation PlayStation. Okay, and now I'm going to parse just like we did before. This time, though, you're going to see ESDE, hey, along with the games. Now, you can change the artwork. You can do all sorts of things in here before you inject it. There is a lot of stuff you can do with Steam ROM Manager. It's just not my thing. I like having everything inside one central emulation hub. But you can add local images. You can refresh images, save the image that you're seeing there. And then you can also use these include and exclude features to make sure you're only putting in what you want into Steam. It's easier to put them in than it is to take them out, especially in quantity. If you put too many of these things in, your Steam Deck is going to drag to a crawl. What's the number? I've seen a couple hundred entries cause problems, right? So we're going to go back to desktop mode real quick through the magic of nonlinear editing. And we're going to go ahead and see if we can find Einhander, along with the others, already injected in progress. Okay, so we go to our library. And if you look under collections, you'll now see we have things like emulation and Sony PlayStation added to our regular Steam ones. Now get out of here, no Chrome. There you go, look at that. If we go under non-Steam, we see the entries that got injected. Very cool. All right, and we can go ahead and make sure that it runs from here. You can also see that you can change the joystick layout for individual games. This is the only time I would ever use Steam to manage my emulated titles, as if I had to use a different control scheme or a different setup. Otherwise, I am perfectly happy. Emulation Station, along with EmuDeck, has good custom configurations for every system out there, and I love it. All right, so now let's go ahead and see if we can get some scrapes here. Now, we're going to go ahead and say scrape just the PlayStation. Well, that's the only games that we have, so it's perfect. And we're going to use something called Screen Scraper. Now, there's two locations, Screen Scraper and the Games DB. Screen Scraper is a little slower, but it's got more stuff, including movies and other stuff, videos. You will need an account if you're going to scrape more than a few hundred a day, and you're going to need a paid account if you want to do more heavy lifting jobs. Now, it's very cheap. It's like $3 a month or something. I went ahead and entered my credentials so we're not interrupted by any sort of API limitations. So here we go. We're going to speed this up a little bit, and you can see it's pulling metadata, pictures, box art, video clips. It's great. Now, this can take forever, and I recommend you back this stuff up. I'll have another video on that once you get everything set up the way you like, just in case disaster strikes. All right, so look at this. How beautiful is that? Your artwork looks great. It's got little animated preview movies. This is the way I like to see it. This is the way I like to experience emulation. I don't like my emulation just tucked into Steam like just some other game. But again, your mileage may vary, void where prohibited. Okay, so now I have copied over a ROM for 3DS and one for the other guy, right? So I've got a game now for each of those two platforms. Now, right now, they're impossible to use. Now, I'm going to help you restore this emulator. This emulator should be named exactly this, and you're going to have to get it yourself. I can't tell you where to get it, but I can tell you it needs to go in the home/applications folder, and it has to be named exactly what you see here. So we're going to move that into place. All right, there it is. And we're going to execute it once from that location. And we're going to say that's okay. And it's saying that we're missing certain things to make it run, right? Now, we're not going to have any anonymous data collected. That's what got you into trouble. All right, so one of the things. So let's go in here and go File, Open Folder, and then there's going to be this folder. This is where you need to put those things we were talking about. Now, I copied them over via SSH and I'm going to copy them right into that folder. Okay. I'm not getting into deep details on all of this on purpose. Just be lucky I'm covering it all. So let's go back in here. Now that we have the emulator restored and we have those files restored, this should work. Let's check it out. Looking good so far. Hey, there you go. It's launching. And again, to avoid the evil demons, I'm going to get out of here as quickly as possible. To make sure everything's savvy with that emulator, we're going to go back into EmuDeck and we're going to reset the configuration. After all, we want EmuDeck's experience in making sure that the configuration is correct. So we're going to jump in there, hit reset configuration. That's going to apply all the things that makes it happy and fun to run it on the Steam Deck. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, no problem at all. And once again, we'll check and make sure that once we reset the configuration on that emulator, that it's actually doing full screen the way it should. Everything's fine. I'm just going to exit out before it runs because we know it works. All right, before we actually show you how to uninstall EmuDeck, let's look at some of the extra features. All of those settings that we chose or didn't choose at the beginning can be set here. The EmuDeck store is loaded with free and very easy to get homebrew and free games for Game Boy, Game Gear, Genesis, Super Nintendo. There's tons of stuff. Not all of it's great, to be sure, but some of it, there's some real gems in here. If, for example, you have a problem in your emulation station or whatever doesn't feel right, these quick resets and custom resets can really help you out. Screen resolutions, maybe you're plugged into a TV or you want to use a higher resolution, you can do so by overriding those here. Retro achievements, if you decide to go that way. EmuDeck compression tool. This is fantastic. It will take all of your games, your game ROMs, and will allow you to compress them into the smallest compatible size, right? So we could choose all of these. If they're ISOs, if they're whatever they are, if they're compatible, they will go through and iterate through each one of them. In this case, it's taking the .gba files and turning them into .7 zip files. So this can save you tons and tons of space. I would not overlook this guy. And this could take anywhere from minutes to hours. So this is a pretty small one, but we're going to go ahead and skip over to the end all the same so that we can move on. All right. And once you're done, well, you just hit OK and you're good. All right. What else do we have in here? Cloud saves, if you're into that sort of thing, totally out of scope for this video, though. If you want to migrate your installation somewhere else, you don't even have to anymore. That's the beauty of it. If you put in a new micro SD card that has a different name and it completely botches your folders, it doesn't matter. You just have to recreate this custom directory symlink that we made earlier. Good thing, big thing. If you still use Decky Loader, then there are some functions here that you could have injected in there as a standalone plugin specifically for EmuDeck. Gyroscope, this is of course outside the scope, but it allows you to tie in some gyro stuff to the platforms that require it. I don't think Power Tools is even required anymore. I would skip on this unless somebody specifically has told you to install it or do something with it. And that brings us to uninstall. There may be a time you want to uninstall this and you want to see just how clean it is. Let's do that process right now. All right, here we go. Yes, I know what I'm doing. I want to get out, right? Maybe you want to move to RetroDeck. I don't know, whatever. So now if you want to delete all your ROM shortcuts, you're going to need to do that through Steam ROM Manager. So that's up to you. Now, if you're like me and don't use Steam ROM Manager at all other than ESDE, then you're not going to have any trouble. Let's see. The installation of Decky Loader was found on your system. Do I need to back up my saves? If you are at all concerned, say yes. If you even remotely think you might need them, say yes. I don't. All right. Do you want the tool to back up your BIOS files? You probably don't, but if you do, you can go for it. Now, would you like to leave any of these emulators intact on the way out? I do not. And off we go. This takes a little while, but not too long. And this is a very good cleanup. Now, in the early days of EmuDeck, there was a lot of little slander going around on Reddit saying that EmuDeck was very unclean and it didn't remove itself well. A lot of that has changed. It's very clean. I did this in another video where I talked about how the uninstall is pretty clean. And that's it. We're done. Okay, so now EmuDeck is gone. And if you want it back, even the installer on your desktop is gone. You'll have to go ahead, go back to your browser, and download it again and follow this whole process again. Hopefully you will have no need or urge to uninstall EmuDeck once you get it all set up. All right, listen, hope you enjoyed what you saw here. If you did, like, subscribe, hit the bell. We appreciate each and every one of you. Leave your questions down below in the description. Make your comments. Of course, we have a Discord at monroeworld.discord.com. We can offer you more assistance there. I'm Shane R. Monroe. Thanks so much for watching, and take care. We'll see you next time.